My name is Miguel. I'm the CTO of IBL Education. We do the learning ecosystems, including the production of the courses and the deployment of the platform for NVIDIA, for IBM, Docker Global Knowledge, SUNY, and a few others. And today we're going to be talking about blockchain, learning ecosystems, and open edX. Now, obviously, this is a buzzword. Okay, we're not going to be talking about deep learning, machine learning, the cloud, influencing marketing, whatever that means. Right, quantum computing. It's like, no, we are getting a little bit past the buzzword and just asking a pretty simple question, right? Which is, in the long term, do we predict that data ownership will be centralized or decentralized, right? Will the data own to the author of the data, or will it be siloed across different organizations, different providers, etc.? So centralization is basically what we have right now, right? So let's just say software development, maybe sadly for us, but it becomes commoditized to some extent, right? So different organizations, different businesses try to make a living by siloing off learners' data. And if you can have network effects, if you can be an Uber or a Facebook or something like that, great. And if you can't, if maybe you are a proprietary learning management system, you still try to silo that data by putting it in obscure formats, only your databases, other people can't share, etc. Right? So that's basically where we are today. Now, obviously, this is not fantastic for the user, right? We can't move people from one different platform to another simply because the data is siloed in a way that forbids this, right? In a university, you can't move from one learning management system to another because, oh, that looks nicer. It's like, well, no, because our instructors are used to entering data in this format and retrieving it in this other one, and it's just too cumbersome. So at the end of the day, that data remains centralized, and it works out for everybody except for the actual user, right? There's the one who has to become a little bit of a victim of this centralization. So then we say, okay, so what's the alternative, right? What's the decentralization look like? And that's what blockchain is, right? So when we talk about blockchain, we are not talking about any one application, right? We're definitely not talking about Bitcoin or ICOs or whatever else. We're really just saying that blockchain is the infrastructure layer for what allows that decentralization to happen, right? So the common analogy is blockchain is HTTP. It would be stupid to judge HTTP by a single website, and the same applies to blockchain, right? So blockchain is that which allows us to see, it's like, well, what would a world be where businesses and different organizations don't make a living by siloing off that data, right? Where they say, okay, that siloing, that appropriation is not what I base my model on. Well, how does this apply to learning ecosystems, right? So we all have accounts in edX, Coursera, Udacity, Canvas, God knows how many open edX platforms we have. So this is where the question comes in. It's like, well, how would blockchain specifically shape the field that we deal with? And there's an obvious use case, which is certificates. So if, as a university student, I want the university to provide an official transcript on New Year's Eve for some reason, it's like, well, that can't really happen right now, right? If you take a course on another platform and that platform is, well, it's down, well, too bad, you're not gonna get your certificate, right? So at the end of the day, philosophically, you're saying that the time and money that you invest into earning some sort of credential, it's like, well, at the end of the day, it's not really your credential, right? It's really up to somebody else. So there's another issue, which is probably not so common in the United States, as we don't really have these trust issues, but in terms of the validity of the certificates, right? You want to be able to prove that your certificate is valid, and maybe more importantly, you want your employers to be able to prove that that certificate is valid. So how do you do that? It's like, well, you have to rely on the people who you paid with your time and money to in order to do that for you. You don't own it. Okay, well, that's one use case. It's probably the most common one, and we're familiar with MIT's block certs and everything. Now, there's another one, which I think it's maybe more serious, which is adaptive learning, right? So basically, deep learning and machine learning taking over industry after industry, and that's great, right? Because it allows for, at the end of the day, I mean, a lot more efficiencies to take place. So, for instance, let's say I take an intro to computer science course on a Canvas platform. Okay, I learned what an if statement is, a for loop is, and I learned what objects are, but I forget. So then I go to a course on edX, and it's an intro to computer science course, right? I really just need a refresher with objects. I don't need to be walked through the if statements, the for loops, etc. But too bad, that's not going to happen on edX. Right? edX is going to make me go through the if statements, the for loops, etc. Because edX doesn't know that I already learned that stuff. And I learned that stuff on another platform, so, you know, for edX, there's nothing it can do. It can't look in the Canvas databases and vice versa. So all of these organizations have basically made, and they're making a living by siloing off that data. Now, that obviously leads to pretty annoying side effects, which is that it's really difficult to have any form of serious adaptive learning, deep learning, machine learning on education and on our systems. And part of that is that there are very few organizations that even have the data to really tackle the problem. So this is a question that is, you know, it arises from the centralization versus the decentralization. And now you can have other use cases, right? So, and maybe these are more oriented towards convenience, but why do you have to enter your profile information every 20 minutes in a different platform? Assuming that you register for a platform every 20 minutes, right? Why can't you just say, okay, well, here's my data, and for consistency purposes, convenience purposes, I want to authorize different client applications to use it. It's like, don't ask me to give you more data that I already gave somewhere else. So these are issues, right? So the certifications, adaptive learning, user management, and other kinds of data. And at the end of the day, well, we say, all right, blockchain, whatever kind of a buzzword, but the question is, are these problems worth solving, right? Do we say in the future everything is going to continue to be centralized and we're just going to live in a world where perpetually organizations make their money by siloing off data and really implementing, you know, dark practices, which is I'm going to make my format basically unintelligible by other people, right? I'm going to silo it off. I'm not going to share that data. It's like, well, do we think that in the long run that's going to be problematic? And I probably say yes, right? Because at the end of the day, you know, that is leading to a number of inefficiencies, and there is really no other way to get around it, right? You're not going to be able to say, if you're edX, for example, you're not going to say, okay, Canvas, I want to have this adaptive learning. I'm going to put all my data in your servers, and I trust you. I mean, I trust you, Canvas, right, to really just do the best for everybody here. Well, no, right, because businesses are not going to be giving their core value, which is data, to others, because you simply don't really trust each other. No one's saying that they should. So what blockchain does is basically create a trust layer where different players can join without making any assumptions about each other. It's okay, I assume we all have our best interests in mind. I don't really want to trust you, you don't really want to trust me, but we recognize that these are problems, so we are going to come together through this, you know, shared ledger in order to solve these, right? And there are obviously different ways of achieving this. So obviously there's the, you know, Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc. The ones that are absolutely public. It's like everybody has access to these, great. But then there are also the permission blockchains, right? So maybe not everybody can see it. Maybe it's just the people in this room, we get access to a permission blockchain, and we at some point in time agree that we trust each other, and our learners maybe just have to agree to trust us without, you know, trusting everybody else. Okay, well, that would be the case for a permission blockchain, and there are different ways to get around that. So at the end of the day, I mean, that's where we come, right? So we say, okay, in the future, we in order to give the data decentralization argument a chance, we say that there is some data that we are going to agree to share, and the arguments for that they're not altruistic necessarily. It's not about the love whatever. I mean, it's really just about doing what is most practical. So open edX, we saw, 60 million learners and everything. It's kind of an ideal landing pad, right, for a lot of these things. So we start to see, well, how can we do this, right? How can we start making this situation happen? And the first use case in terms of the certificates is already being tackled by a lot of people, right? So MIT has block certs in place that allows us to insert certificates on the Ethereum blockchain. Okay, that's a public blockchain, and then visualize them. Great, so now a learner can have certificates on this shared ledger and have it be visualized by anybody. And there are community colleges across the country and many other organizations that have issued combined thousands of these certificates. In terms of other kinds of data, well, then we start to raise these questions. Is what kinds of analytics can we start to put in, right? What kinds of analytics or results about our performance in maybe some problems can we put in this shared database, right? If this shared database or blockchain knew that you had learned what an if statement is in one course, well, how can we make that accessible or viewable by the other platform in order for it to turn its algorithm? So that is what we are tackling, and we're running these explorations with SUNY right now, among others. And anyway, just got the stop sign, so thank you so much.